Chapter 5. Following Elizabeth's inspiring story of determination, tonight we join Emma and Corey as they meet John Hawkins, a farmer during the Great Depression. In a time of profound hardship, they'll discover how the spirit of Christmas can shine brightest when times are darkest. The shimmering mist swirled and thickened, enveloping Corey and Emma in its ethereal embrace. As it gradually dissipated, they blinked in astonishment. The opulent carriage had vanished, replaced by a stark winter landscape. They now stood in the midst of a Civil War-era military encampment, complete with canvas tents, smoking campfires, and soldiers in blue uniforms huddled against the cold. The transformation was so sudden and complete that for a moment the siblings wondered if they had somehow stepped through time itself. The sharp scent of pine needles and the rich aroma of wood smoke wafted through the air, intertwining with the bone-deep chill of a September evening that nipped at their noses and fingertips. Emma pulled her fleece sweatshirt a bit closer, and her breath escaped in a visible puff as she took in the scene, her eyes wide with wonder. "Corey!" she whispered, her trembling fingers grasping her brother's sleeve. "Look!" Near a smoldering campfire that cast flickering shadows across the snow-dusted ground, a solitary figure sat hunched on a weathered log, his shoulders bowed as if carrying the weight of the world. His blue uniform, though meticulously maintained, bore the telltale signs of long campaigns, frayed cuffs, faded patches, and the invisible weight of countless battles. The soldier's gaze was fixed on a worn photograph cradled in his trembling hands, his fingers tracing the edges with a gentleness that spoke volumes. Pixie nudged the siblings forward, her tail swishing encouragingly through the ghostly snowflakes that drifted around them. As they approached, the crunch of snow beneath their feet shattered the eerie silence, causing the soldier to look up. His deep brown eyes were tinged with a sorrow that seemed to reach across the centuries. "Hello there," he said softly, his voice a mere whisper that somehow carried clearly through the still night air. "I'm William Anderson." He gestured to the log beside him with a graceful, if slightly ethereal motion. "Care to join me? I never thought I'd spend Christmas like this, so far from home." Corey and Emma exchanged glances, excitement and trepidation passing between them. They settled onto the log, feeling the rough bark beneath their fingers, yet also sensing the otherworldly nature of their surroundings. The fire crackled and popped, sending a shower of golden sparks spiraling into the inky night sky, each one a tiny star born of memory and magic. William's form shimmered and wavered, his edges blurring like watercolors in the rain, sometimes as solid as the log beneath them, other times as insubstantial as morning mist. The effect was mesmerizing, a visual representation of his status between two worlds. "We're Corey and Emma," Corey introduced them, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and gentle curiosity. Can you tell us your story?" William's gaze returned to the photograph, a wistful smile playing at his lips. "I was just a farm boy from Vermont," he began, his words painting pictures in the crisp night air. "Enlisted in 61 when I was 19. Left behind my folks, my little sisters, and Mary. He held up the photograph, revealing the image of a young woman with eyes that sparkled even in the sepia tones, her gentle smile a beacon of hope frozen in time. As William spoke, the camp around them seemed to come alive with phantoms of the past. Ghostly figures of other soldiers moved about, their laughter and conversation a mere whisper on the wind, like echoes of long ago camaraderie. The faint strains of a familiar Christmas carol drifted through the air, a haunting melody that tugged at the heartstrings. "That's Silent Night," Emma remarked, her voice hushed with reverence, her eyes glistening in the darkness. William nodded, a spark of joy flickering in his eyes. "Used to sing it for the boys to lift their spirits. They called me the nightingale of the regiment." His smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. "But there's not much singing nowadays. Not since Gettysburg." The air grew heavy with the weight of unspoken sorrow, pressing down on them like a sodden wool blanket. Corey leaned forward, his curiosity piqued, his expression a mixture of sympathy and keen interest. "Gettysburg? We learned about that in history class. It was one of the bloodiest battles of the war, wasn't it?" "Aye, that it was," William replied, his voice barely audible over the crackling fire, each word seeming to cost him dearly. "July 3rd, 1863. That's where I fell." His form flickered more intensely, as if the very memory threatened to extinguish his presence, his edges blurring and reforming like smoke in a breeze. Emma reached out instinctively, her heart aching for this long-lost soldier. Her hand passed through William's arm in a shower of ethereal sparks, a cascade of twinkling lights that danced between them before fading into the night. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes, each one a crystal of empathy and compassion. William looked at her, a sad smile on his face, his eyes holding the wisdom and weariness of ages. "Don't weep for me, lass. I made my peace long ago. But there's something that's kept me tethered all these years." He trailed off, his gaze drifting to the starry sky above, each pinprick of light a silent witness to his century-long vigil. Corey and Emma exchanged knowing glances, the pieces falling into place. This was why they were here, why the Christmas Express had woven its spell to bring them to this moment in time. "What is it?" Corey asked gently, his voice warm with understanding. "How can we help?" William's eyes refocused on the siblings, a glimmer of hope shining through the sorrow like the first ray of dawn after a long, dark night. "I never got to say goodbye," he said softly, each word laden with regret and longing. "To my family, to Mary. Never got to tell them how much they meant to me, how thoughts of them kept me going through the darkest days." Emma's face lit up with an idea, her expression brightening like a candle flame suddenly sheltered from the wind. What if we helped you write a letter, a final goodbye?" The ghostly soldier's eyes widened, a smile breaking across his face, transforming his entire countenance. "You'd do that for me? Truly?" Corey nodded firmly, a determined set to his jaw. "Of course we would. I think that's why we're here." Corey looked over his shoulder to where Pixie sat silently, keeping watch. As Pixie wagged her tail in approval, her dark eyes twinkling with gentle wisdom, the siblings set about their task. They were ready to help William find the closure he'd been seeking for over a century and a half, to bridge the gap between past and present with words of love and remembrance. The true spirit of Christmas, one of love, compassion, and healing, began to work its magic in the heart of that long-ago winter camp, weaving a tapestry of connection that transcended time itself. The campfire danced and swayed, painting the small group in a palette of amber and gold, their huddled forms creating a tableau of timeless connection. As Corey, Emma, and William leaned in close, Pixie curled up at their feet, her presence a comforting anchor in this surreal journey through time, her fur shimmering with hints of stardust. "All right," Emma said softly, her voice barely above a whisper, as she pulled out a piece of parchment and a quill that had materialized beside her, the feather iridescent in the firelight. "What would you like to say, William?" The ghostly soldier closed his eyes for a moment, his translucent form rippling like heat haze as he gathered his thoughts. When he spoke, his voice was filled with a quiet intensity that seemed to resonate through the very air around them. "Dear Ma, Pa, and my dearest Mary," he began, his words flowing like a gentle stream. As William dictated, Emma's quill glided across the parchment as if guided by an unseen hand, each stroke leaving behind elegant script that shimmered and pulsed with an otherworldly light, the ink seeming to capture starlight itself. Corey listened intently, his hands clasped tightly in his lap, his eyes misting over as the poignant words took shape before him. "If you're reading this, I'm afraid I won't be coming home," William continued, his form flickering like a candle in a draught, edges blurring and reforming with each emotion that passed through him. "Please don't grieve for me for too long. Know that I fought for what I believed in, and that thoughts of you kept me going through the darkest times." The soldier's voice cracked as he spoke of his mother's apple pie, the memory seeming to waft through the air, mingling with the scent of wood smoke. He recalled his father's lessons of honor, each word ringing with the weight of cherished moments long past. When he addressed Mary, the air around them seemed to grow thick with unspoken love and regret, shimmering like heat on a summer day. "And Mary, my love," William whispered, his words caressing the night air like a gentle breeze, "I'm sorry I couldn't keep my promise to return to you. Please live your life fully and find happiness. Your smile was my guiding star in the darkest nights." As Emma wrote the final words, a single tear fell from William's eye, dissolving into a shower of golden sparks that drifted upward like fireflies before fading into the night. "I'll be watching over you all," he concluded, his voice strong despite its ethereal quality. "Merry Christmas, and remember me when you gather round the fire. Your loving son and forever friend, William." The moment Emma's quill lifted from the parchment, the letter began to shimmer and fade, its edges blurring like fine mist. The words seemed to lift off the page, hanging in the air for a heartbeat, before dissolving into motes of light. "What's happening?" Corey asked, his voice filled with wonder as he reached out to touch the vanishing letter, his fingers passing through the streams of golden light. William smiled, a look of profound peace settling over his features. "It's finding its way home," he explained, his voice carrying the weight of a century's longing, "to a place where my family's descendants will discover it, generations from now. You've given me the greatest gift I could have asked for, a chance to say goodbye." As the final wisp of the letter dissolved into the ether, the winter camp around them began to blur and shift. The crackling fire dimmed to embers, the tents and crates melting into indistinct shapes, as if time itself was unraveling and reforming again. William's form grew more translucent, edges softening until he seemed more an impression of a man than a solid figure, but the smile on his face remained bright as a beacon. "Thank you," he said, his voice now sounding distant, as if carried on a breeze from another time. "You've brought peace, not just to me, but to generations of my family. Remember the lessons of our time, the cost of conflict, the importance of cherishing every moment with loved ones." Corey and Emma nodded solemnly, the weight of William's words settling over them like a warm, heavy quilt on a cold night. As the ghostly soldier faded from view, his final words lingered in the air, resonating in their very bones. "Merry Christmas, and may you always find your way home." The world around them swirled and shifted, colors blending into one another, until with a gentle lurch, the siblings found themselves back in the luxurious train car. The transition was so smooth they could hardly believe what they had just experienced. The lingering scent of wood smoke and pine, the only testament to their journey through time. They sat in thoughtful silence for a moment, processing the profound encounter, the soft click of the train's wheels on the track, a soothing rhythm beneath them. "You know," Corey said finally, his voice soft with realization, his eyes distant as if still seeing the ghostly winter camp, "I keep thinking about what Matthew told us about the Civil War, how it tore families and a nation apart. It's so much more than just a chapter in our history books now. I really didn't listen at the time, but I think I will ask him again." Emma nodded, her eyes still glistening with unshed tears. The quill she had used to write William's letter clutched tightly in her hand. "William's story makes it feel so real," she said quietly. "It's not just stuff in a history book anymore. These were actual people with families and dreams. I can almost imagine what they went through." Pixie nuzzled their hands, her fur still carrying a hint of otherworldly shimmer. Her thoughts echoed in their minds gently. "This was your first lesson, and you've learned well. The past has much to teach us about cherishing the present. Each moment is a gift, as precious as the starlight we've traveled through." As the magical ambiance of their encounter with William faded, the plush seats of the Christmas Express cradled them in comfort, a stark contrast to the rough-hewn log they had shared with William. A new appreciation for history, family, and the true spirit of Christmas bloomed in their hearts, delicate yet enduring. They gazed out the frost-kissed windows, the passing landscape a blur of snow-covered wonder. Stars twinkled overhead, each one perhaps carrying the story of another soul, waiting to be heard. Corey and Emma knew that whatever adventures lay ahead, they would face them with the courage and compassion inspired by a long-ago soldier who had finally found his way home. The magic of the Christmas Express had shown them that the truest journeys are those of the heart, and that the bonds of love and memory can transcend even the boundaries of time itself. Emma tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, her eyes still misty. Wow, it felt so real, she said softly. Corey nodded, absently stroking Pixie's fur. It's like we actually went back to 1863. I never thought I'd say this, but I think I get why Matthew's so into history. Pixie's tail thumped gently against the seat. You've taken your first step into a larger world, her thoughts whispered in their minds. Each soul you encounter on this journey has something to teach you about the true spirit of Christmas. As if on cue, the lights in the carriage dimmed slightly, and a familiar shimmering mist began to form at the far end of the car. Corey and Emma exchanged glances, a mixture of excitement and apprehension flickering across their faces. Whatever or whoever came next, they knew they were ready to face it together, their hearts and minds open to the magic and meaning of this extraordinary Christmas journey. Ready for our next passenger? Corey asked, a small smile tugging at his lips. Emma nodded, squaring her shoulders. Ready as I'll ever be. Let's see what other Christmas miracles this train has in store for us. As the mist began to coalesce into a new form, Corey and Emma leaned forward, eager to embrace the next chapter of their magical adventure aboard the Christmas Express. John's lesson in resilience and community spirit will stay with our young travelers. Tomorrow, we'll journey to the battlefields of World War II, where a brave nurse shares her story of compassion. Check out all of the other books in the Magical Papillon series of cozy mysteries on Amazon now.